We're thrilled to have you here with us today. We have a topic called Boundaries in Infrastructure if your pace of change is accelerating. In today's fast moving world of remote work, global teams, and shifting expectations, one thing is clear: change is accelerating and it's not slowing down. But while speed is essential, it's not everything. Without the right infrastructure and clearly defined boundaries, speed can lead us to burnout, breakdowns, and confusions. And so today we pause and ask, how do we scale communication and collaboration without losing clarity? What structures and rhythms can help us thrive, not just survive, in this new pace of work? And how do we reimagine old frameworks like RASI to fit today's real world complexity? This isn't just a session about project mechanics. It's a reflection of the economics, the legacy, the rhythms of how we work. We'll explore how to move from painful work to productive flow by shifting how we think about boundaries, roles, and synchronizations. Accept insights, probably provocation, a sharp lens of how to lead better when everything moves faster. But first, a few words on how today's session will unfold and how you can actively participate. I will share the suggested conduct, say a few words about our German chapter for those who are not familiar with it, tell us more about the work we're doing in the local group Darmstadt, and I'll introduce the speaker. Following the presentation that the speaker will lead and the Q&A session, you will have the opportunity to rate the event. You will be informed about the upcoming events, and you'll claim you will be able actually to get the PDU code at the end of the session. Please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation to avoid any background noise. We really kindly ask you to use the full name in the description when you're logging in, so we can identify you accurately for the purposes of PDU. If you like, you can turn on your camera. We always want to see your faces. And feel free to use the chat window to make questions to the speaker that might be answered throughout the presentation, but also at the end. You can write comments, opinions about what you're listening to, but also you can share your LinkedIn profile. You're also welcome to reach out directly to the speaker during or following after the presentation. And please know that this session is going to be recorded. However, any recording, transcriptions, or participations of AI bots is strictly prohibited, and they'll be removed from this event. Founded in 2020 throughout the merger of 3 former chapters, our chapter now spans 5 regions and more than 25 local groups. We are proud to present a dynamic community of approximately 11,000 PMI members across the entire Germany who are coming from 43 different countries. Nearly 4,000 of these are part of our chapter's diverse and international network. Our work is powered by a dedicated team of over 150 volunteers who bring energy, expertise, and passion to everything we do. Together, we are committed to supporting the project management profession by empowering leaders, facilitating continuous learning like this, and creating space for connection and collaboration. Now, let me tell you a few things about our local group, Darmstadt. It's a community built by volunteers from 6 different countries. We are 7 people altogether since recently. We host 2 free online events every month. It's the English-speaking hub of the PMI German chapter, and that the English language is what connects us in Darmstadt. And apart from the 2 online events, we are organizing a monthly roundtable conversation in person, because we do all of this because we believe in the power of connection, both virtual and human. Since we started, over 2,500 people have joined our events, and more than 60 of them have been so committed that they have attended more than 10 sessions. That's a true sign of impact we're doing. And we also keep the conversation going following each event. or throughout the month on our LinkedIn group, where we have more than 400 members. Now, behind all of this effort and dedicated work, there are dedicated people, 7 volunteers, as I mentioned. It's Thomas Valenta, who is from Bad Kreuznach, Floria's Adrien, who is from France, and he is currently located in Darmstadt, Mohammed, who is originally from Afghanistan and is also located in Darmstadt. He's also on the call. Tufik, who is located in and operating from Lebanon, from Beirut. Olya Stefanovska, who is coming from North Macedonia, is living and working in Stuttgart. And since not too long ago, we have Almira Hasanovic, who is from Montenegro, and she's residing in Butelborn. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. Myself, Maria, is coming from Brussels, and I'm also originally from North Macedonia. Together, we shape this local group with passion and purpose, and we're glad to have you being part of this. Now, I have the great pleasure of introducing someone who brings a truly unique perspective to the world of innovation and project leadership. Robert Snyder is the founder and presenter of Innovation Elegance, where he helps organizations rethink how they approach change. Within a remarkable 30-year career that bridges the worlds of project management and the performing arts, Robert blends the discipline of execution with the creativity and expression, showing that innovation doesn't have to be chaotic, and elegance isn't just aesthetic, it's strategic. His professional journey spans corporate and consulting roles, startups, and transformation programs. Along the way, Robert has earned PMP and Agile certification and brought that expertise into diverse industries and contexts, including his own work as a performer in vocal, dance, and theater ensembles. He holds a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Illinois and an MBA in strategy from Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern, equipping him with both the analytical rigor and the strategic lens to drive change that matters. Robert is also a published author with 2 books already available, Innovation Elegance and Innovation Portfolio, and a third one, Elegant Leadership, on the way. His writing challenges conventional thinking and gives leaders practical, actionable ways to guide them with both ruthlessness and grace. What makes Robert's approach so impactful is his deep commitment to making innovation not just achievable, but inevitable, and to doing it in a way that keeps people, processes, and purpose in balance. Please join me in welcoming Robert Snyder as he leads us into a conversation that promises to challenge, inspire, and elevate the way we think about leadership and innovation. Thank you, Robert, for coming today to share your wisdom with us.
Thank you very much, Maria and Thomas, for hosting me today. Greetings from Chicago in the, I'm going to call it the divided states of America, and I'll leave it at that. Over the past year, maybe even more, we've heard this cliche, the pace of change is accelerating. Your life will never be as slow again as it is today. I find that cliche to be quite ambiguous, so ambiguous to the point of it being unhelpful and counterproductive. I can personally think of 14 different interpretations of that cliche. But regardless of how you might interpret that cliche, intensity and pressure is increasing in our teamwork. Violating or threatening boundaries. At any scale, we need infrastructure, whether you're a growing city, whether you're a growing restaurant, any growing business. Infrastructure, scale matters. And so that is how we arrived on the title for today's session, Boundaries and Infrastructure, in case the pace of change is accelerating for you. So quick video and audio check. Maria, is everything, you can hear me and see things okay?
Yes.
Okay. I do welcome, so I aim to pause after almost every slide. And so I welcome questions and interruptions, pushback. ideas, and active chat is nothing short of entertaining. So be as interactive as you would like to be, please. Simon Sinek has a famous TED Talk called Start with Why. So let's start with why. One of the most recent inspirations for this title is an event that actually has not happened yet. There's a US-based event tomorrow called the Infinite Workday. Well, this word infinite betrays what's going on in many of our work environments where the boundaries and the infrastructure don't exist. And so, again, this material aims to address this evolution, the trend into the failure of boundaries and infrastructure, to the point where what does discipline even mean anymore? This is a photo of nailing Jello to the wall. When work is structureless, when it has no structure, when it has no sequence, when it's just a blob, what really matters anymore? And many of us, when we have disengaged colleagues, some days we just want to bury our head in our laptop. The good news is that, like all forms of infrastructure and scale that we see in our businesses and in our cities and our societies, it is really financially attractive to establish the right boundaries and build the right infrastructure at the right pace with the right rhythm. The agenda for today's session, let's talk about the economics of infrastructure and boundaries. Let's talk about the legacy, because all of us leave things behind, whether we leave a company, leave our society, leave a team, we leave a legacy, which means the other side is onboarding. What does it mean to have healthy onboarding for the next team, the next generation? I'm a dance instructor, and I joke with my students that I only teach the mechanics of dance. There's a whole area of dance that I am not an expert in, and that's style. When you think of music, musicians, whether it's a singer or an instrumentalist, we distinguish between technique and expression. And today's session only covers the mechanics. I leave it to you to identify and explore your own style, personality, flair, creativity. But there is a difference between mechanics and style. There's a difference between discipline and empathy. And finally, we'll talk about rhythm. There's that cliche, when you're good with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm a musician that got caught in IT for 30 years. Everything I see in teamwork feels to me like it is a symphony, or it should be a symphony. Because if we're not imitating a symphony, we sound terrible. And so one of the frameworks I will present to you today, you'll see at the bottom here, and I hope that you can see the flow, the rhythm, the shift, and the handoffs among these 5 verbs. And finally, the takeaways. Here you see, it's not quite the Autobahn, but it's some very well orchestrated traffic. This speed isn't thoughtless. It's extremely thoughtful. It has high discipline. It has high empathy. Every one of these cars really cares about the behavior of the cars next to it. This is very high discipline. It's very high empathy. And if we want our teams to truly be fast, it's not free. The deep dive of this material is in 2 of my 3 books. The first half of the first book is all about the metaphor of a factory. I believe a healthy team is a kind of agreement factory. We agree on a roadmap, a charter, a process flow, etc. I joke that a dysfunctional team is a disagreement factory. The second half of the first book is all about the arts. What can we learn, benefit, and profit from the human activities of theater, improv, partner dance, and music? And together, these 2 metaphors, factory and the arts, these help us shape healthy boundaries for our team. The second book is all about what do we do that's worth putting on paper. Because whatever you put on paper, you can scale. This is infrastructure. It's significant upfront cost. Why do we do it? Low marginal cost. That is scale, and that helps profitability. So high discipline and high empathy are very financially attractive. Okay, just to practice pausing, I would like to pause and welcome reactions, questions. Are there any other artists in the audience? Does anyone else have a dance, theater, improv, or music background? Could you have created this presentation because you are already thinking in terms of music in your own teamwork? And I'm very comfortable with silence, and I just slowly move on in case anyone would like to interrupt.
Rob, I have a question as well.
Please.
What do you understand when you use the word scale? What's really your definition of it?
Being able to repeat something so there's a sense of standardization, a sense of routine, so that at large volumes, we don't get crushed. How did I do? Does that seem okay?
Yeah, that seems to be okay.
Okay. Would you like to share your own?
Yeah, for me, scale is everything which is measurable somehow, and of course, the repetitiveness comes with being measured. But I think more in the form of make project success measurable in that sense of the word scale. Yeah.
Awesome. Peter?
Yes. I'm also a certified coach from the International Coach Federation. And in one of our global meetings, we had a training dancing tango. And that's very interesting, yeah, especially if you are very dominant, yeah. You have to let the other person lead, yeah. And so you have some resistance, yeah, to let the other in tango. You know that only one can lead, and so and you have to move according to the music, otherwise you get hurt by other people. So this was a very, very good experience moving to music. I also like this kind of coordinated dances, yeah, to form a team spirit in my project teams.
Yeah. Awesome. Anyone else have a thought that they'd like to share? Okay, I will slowly move on. Let's talk about the economics of infrastructure. Here you see my mouse is, there it is. You see two different cost profiles. Let's talk through why these two very simple bar charts are vital to us thinking through the economics of our communication in our teams. And I'll just dive into three main communication channels. All of us have meetings, we all have email, and we all have documentation. If you are a culture that is addicted to meetings, back to back to back to back to back to back meetings, meeting gridlock, that is completely understandable because of the short black bar. It's just cheap and easy. It is cheap and easy to drive a culture by meetings. But if you have ever felt frustration with meeting gridlock, and you felt like, we have too many meetings, why is that also understandable? It's the tall red bar. This is high marginal cost, and this is meeting gridlock. All right, let's look at the bar chart on the right. Why is creating documentation so unpopular? It's the tall black bar. It's discipline. It's painful. It's, do we really have to? And if you think about numerous forms of discipline in our lives, up front, it's unpopular. Why do we have discipline? Why do we have thoughtfulness in our lives? It's because of the short red bar. Because now that we have the project charter, the training materials, this recording, right? The fact that we are having this conversation today is the tall black bar. And anyone who listens or watches this video later, it's the short red bar. This is scalable communication. I found this quote a couple years ago, and I think it was applicable to teenagers. And so not only do teenagers need to hear this message, but our teams need to heed this as well. Do what is easy and your life will become hard. That is the bar chart on the left. Do what is hard and your life will become easy. That is the bar chart on the right. If you think of a cheap or procrastinating team, that's the bar chart on the left. If you think of a proactive team, that is the bar chart on the right. If your culture is addicted to meetings and shrugs at documentation, that tall red bar is the painful, it's the painful work. Now on the right, the tall black bar is it's hard work. It's not easy, but it's well compensated, but it's the hard work. And I'm hoping that this material will help you distinguish and choose hard work on the right instead of the painful work on the left. Does anyone, I think I'm done with my comments on this slide. Does anyone else have any reactions to this slide? I do have another couple fun, lighthearted examples as you're thinking of your reactions to this slide. If we're at a conference with 3 people, name tags are overkill. So at low communication traffic of a small conference, we would choose the low traffic cost profile on the left. But as registrations for our conference increase to 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, at some point we hit a tipping point that justifies, can defend the bar chart on the right. And that tall black bar are name tags. We could take another example of a restaurant. If I'm a tiny restaurant that only serves 2 dishes, a written menu is overkill. But as the number of offerings that I offer at my restaurant grow to 10 dishes, 20 dishes, gasp, a written menu is not overkill. And why would we have a written menu? To reduce or even minimize the marginal cost of setting expectations about what the restaurant serves. So I believe that this bar chart on the right, this is all of profitability. This is scale. And so as we want our teams and our companies to grow, I believe we should be nothing short of obsessed. This is a strong word, but I want to be obsessed with transferring and migrating our cost profile from what's on the left to what's on the right. Again, I'd love to pause. Any reactions? Okay, I will keep going.
Yes. I just have a comment. It might be easier if you have several instances of marginal cost in this graphics, because now if you there at the upfront cost and the marginal cost, it adds up to the same level. But if you are aware that the marginal costs are not once but several times, I think it makes it easier to understand.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, Peter has raised his hand.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I look at this graph, I ask myself, is this total cost? I think so, yeah. Aggregated cost of the whole thing. But there's also the aspect of the cost per person, which makes, let's say, people unhappy. Yeah. So if you have a high load of work to do as a person in a meeting that takes hours and hours, you tend not to focus anymore.
Thank you for that. All I keep thinking about is for purposes of a 1 hour session, um, I try to keep my slides as simple as possible, and I respect all the complexities that you would like to introduce. I accept that.
I have one situational example that happened with a customer where for 3 years working for them in a project that was 7 digits, the provider of services never provided any documentation for the code that they have delivered for them, which they created a documentational debt. And then because they were lazy or they didn't define or they didn't care, the cost of losing that customer was huge, which brought them to a point where they decided, okay, we're gonna pay from our own money the same people that were working 3 years ago to create the same or the create to create documentation for the code that they have coded 3 years ago. And that requires time and effort to go through the code and remember what you were doing. And some people have resigned or moved on, so we had to assign new people. So the company, the provider of services, lost a lot of money into recreating the documentational debt that they didn't thought previously or care about, just because the cost of losing the customer was big. This is how I compare it in that situation.
Yeah,
And then
excellent.
it became a habit, and they tied it to the performance evaluation. It was mandatory for them. We created templates for every member who was part of the technical team who was delivering a code or any type of work. They had specific templates for any type of work, and it was their default. And part of the assigned points on each story or requirement, they had to create documentation. It became habit in the company, and that's how they saved and created a big legacy of documentation and knowledge management, full of documentation. Of course, it went to a very bad end where they were documenting everything, a lot of things that were not necessary, but they learned from their mistakes and they narrowed it down to categories. But they spent a lot of money, more money that they could have saved as they were coding and documenting for that specific customer. Fortunately, they saved their bags and they preserved the satisfaction of the customer by delivering 3 years worth of documentation for them.
That's awesome. The framework that I will present in a few slides, Maria, actually anticipates this scenario of over-documentation. So, and the last slide I have to present today talks about methodology debt. So I love that we're already tiptoeing into the themes of tech debt, documentation debt, and we could talk about innovation debt, like a societal feature backlog, because we're not innovating quickly enough. We're not innovating at scale quickly enough. And this is because I believe we are tethered to habits of the past. So I believe we currently have a kind of methodology debt. Okay, I'm not seeing hands, so I will continue. So the second agenda item today is legacy. What do we leave behind as innovation professionals? I'm going to expose 1/3 of this portfolio, and I'm going to contrast it with the portfolio of meeting minutes. Imagine, I'm seeing Peter nod his head. Imagine a portfolio of nothing but meeting minutes. And let's go back to that phrase, do what is easy and your life will become hard. Because you know what's really easy? Meeting minutes. Because all it is evidence that some people showed up, some people talked, and some chump was willing to scribe, or we just delegated it to AI. And this leads into infinite amounts of documentation. I believe that across all of our expertise, we can inventory exactly. Now, it doesn't have to be rigid. I'm not promoting rigidity, but I'm promoting an explicitness. What do we do that's worth keystrokes? So this first third of the slide are all the things that I believe an innovation organization should put on paper before their next project starts. This is cross-project. This is project-independent work. So this is at a frequency, a rhythm, a symphony of quarterly or monthly or weekly. And for some of my audience members who are anti-documentation, I joke that this list becomes a checklist of no. This slide gives you 60 things, evidently, to avoid documenting. The green circles here, I do a separate session called Trust, 10 tools to not leave it to chance. And so the majority of this work, sometimes I affectionately call it the elegant expectation factory. And the framework that I'm about to present are the gears, the teeth for the factory. And this word trust, the culture trait of trust, is the lubrication. It's the oil for the factory. So what's in the green circles today, I don't cover at any detail, but I did want to point out that there's a distinction between mechanics and style, gears and lubrication. And so there are specific templates to maximize trust, because good managers and leaders come and go. Bad leaders and managers come and go. Let's not leave trust to chance. The second palette here gets into project-specific assets. Again, these are very valuable. This is discipline, so it's not easy, but this is the valuable hard work. And you see project management, future state process, and under people, this is change management. The framework that I've chosen to use is from PROSCI, P-R-O-S-C-I, and the framework is called ADKAR, A-D-K-A-R. So if you are not familiar with change management or PROSCI or that framework, I would encourage you to spend, maybe 20 or 30 minutes becoming familiar with the ADKAR framework. Your change management siblings will thank you. And then, of course, the bottom third here is everything under the umbrella of tech: design, build, test. Again, this is a checklist. It's finite. It's explicit. It's not rigid. In the era of AI, the word prompt engineering is very common. This is a prompt. These are templates and structures. They're decision bundles, right? A project charter is a bundle of decisions. A process flow is a bundle of decisions. From project to project, all of your answers are different, hopefully. But a lot of the questions are the same. That's why templates help us scale. So if you like to think of every project or all teamwork as just a rhythm of Q&A, I sometimes joke, instead of an FAQ, frequently asked questions, being 3% of your scope, what if your FAQ was 100% of your scope? That's scale. That's muscle memory. And once on or off the dance floor, if my muscle memory is solid, now I can elevate my brain power and my attention to more stylistic, entrepreneurial, and empathetic matters. This is infrastructure. Meeting minutes, if I change all of these items to meeting minutes, and I said we're just going to aim for 60 meeting minutes, that's not infrastructure. Because now every project can ride the rails and benefit, stand on the shoulders of the project before it. There's that acronym VUCA, and that second letter of U is uncertainty. As we curate and reinforce month to month, quarter to quarter, project to project, we reduce our uncertainty, we improve our certainty, so that every team member can say, well, when they ask, is what I do valuable? Yes, it absolutely is. Over the last year, I hear a lot of concerns about grunt work or unsexy work, and people want to elevate their focus and be more strategic. Well, I would argue that there is no grunt work. All of this is valuable. This helps us create the right friction, because the friction is inside the plan, inside the charter. It's inside the process flow. So we can raise our healthy friction, which is collaboration, and reduce our unhealthy friction. Task conflict is good. Personality conflict is not good. Disagreeing is okay. demonizing, not okay. The right documentation, governed in the right way, is nothing short of a love letter to your future team, which you might be on that team. If you want to undermine your next team, you will minimize this documentation. Again, I'd love to pause. Any reactions to a finite, again, back to the title of today's session, boundaries and infrastructure. And this is a vital slide. Any reactions, good, bad, or ugly, to this slide? Okay. Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
I'll just quickly
Yeah.
mention how I see parking lot, and that's part of the 10 tools. And you mentioned innovation. How many innovative ideas have been parked in the parking lot and never discussed again in the meeting notes, that have been left in the meeting notes forever? No one goes back to them to discuss them. Such a loss.
Yes.
And I
Thank
don't
you.
know if any company has a parking lot documentation.
Yeah. So I used to call it BRIQ, BRIC, for barriers, risks, issues, and questions. Some teams break them out into separate logs, and I think there's too much risk for disagreement, saying it's an issue, no, it's a risk, no, it's an issue, no, it's a risk. Just put it all in one parking lot. That's my point of view. And I do have a template on my blogs and my book. It's in another deck. So if anyone, I think this is very commonly available on the web, but if anyone would like an example of a parking lot, I'm happy to provide that after today's session. Peter.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, agree with Maria. And I also add that in my area, we actually have a documentation on the parking lot, like the ideas that have not become a project because of priorities or lack of resources and so on, to revisit them on a quarterly or annual base. I think that's really important, because situations, customer opinions, and also my own knowledge can change, yeah, over time. And you are right, Maria. Yeah. So if you don't do that, you have a gold mine and you don't dig it.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm glad that someone is using the parking lot.
Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, I will slowly move on. We're going to move into, I think, the third of the 4 agenda items. Let's talk about mechanics. This, well, it goes by different pronunciations, I think, around the world. I learned it as racy. Maria, you called it, what did you call it?
I think we call it Razzi, at least that's how I
Okay.
pronounce it,
Okay.
Eastern, in the
Yeah.
Eastern way.
Okay. This framework has been around a really long time. It harbors a lot of ambiguity. It's not solving your biggest problems, and it's a false sense of governance. Too often, it's a set it and forget it. So I believe, as well used as it is, it's not sacred. And I believe we should reimagine the RACI matrix to reduce and even minimize ambiguity. So one way I believe we can reduce the ambiguity is to decide the form of speech. Instead of governing with adjectives, how about verbs? Because verbs convey action. And I'm less interested in managing or governing disposable work, stuff that's just a chat where it's low risk, it's disposable, it's not collaborative, it's low value. I'm not interested in governing that stuff because that turns into micromanaging. What I'm really interested in governing is what's worth putting on paper that must have collaboration, that it's high risk, it's high value. And so around 20 years ago, in an operations class in business school, I was taking an operations supply chain course, and we were learning everything about the factory. Inventory levels, throughput, Little's Law, queuing theory. Why would a fast food restaurant have 4 tills, 4 cash registers, and 4 queues versus a different configuration? And that's when the insight for me was that not only was my employer, my company, a factory, but my team. My team was a kind of factory. And then I saw that conveyor belt of all those things, the roadmap, the project charter, the logical data model, the GUI design. And so instead of governing with 4 adjectives, I started my default in a project plan was how many things can I put under the governance of 5 verbs? And then at PMI San Diego, about 10 months ago, someone blurted out from the audience, 5 verbs. Oh yeah, Dr. Red. So I was very delighted that I now had a cute label because RACI has its own label for the 4 adjectives. I wanted a label for the 5 verbs, and I spent 20 years and I never thought of Dr. Red. So I love this quote from the 4 disciplines of execution. Execution's 2 best friends are simplicity and transparency. And the good news is that 5 verbs gives us both. When we really lean into 5 verbs in our project plan, and I'm specifically talking about how to govern work in a project plan. I'm not talking about 5 verbs within a process flow. I'm really just talking about, again, the metaphor of this symphony, well-orchestrated traffic and scale. 5 verbs, when we lean into the 5 verbs in our project plan, we create high simplicity and high transparency, not only of the work product, but of the symphony, the orchestration, the rhythm and the speed of the work in front of us. So another good thing about simplicity and transparency is they're 2 of the opposites of those last 2 letters of VUCA, right? The last 2 letters of VUCA, C is complexity. The opposite of complexity is simplicity. That last letter A, ambiguity, I can think of several opposites, but one opposite of ambiguity is transparency. And so again, through the asset portfolio and through the 5 verbs, we really start to confront and solve the last 3 letters of VUCA. Any reactions to that slide or this image? Positive or negative reactions to replacing RACI, those 4 adjectives, with 5 verbs?
Bettina has a comment. She says, I always see that teams, including myself, have difficulties in a clear separation of responsible and accountable. This transfer is much better. The 5 verb transfer.
Awesome. Somewhere I mentioned the R versus A, or maybe that's a different deck. And I saw Dagmar had her hand up as well.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment that with stakeholders within the RACI, it's very often that I see stakeholders that always want to be consulted and involved, but it's not clear what they're actually supposed to do, if they should actually approve it or revise it. So with these 5 words, it gets a bit better of orchestrations of how they participate in the choreography of the project.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I'll slowly move on unless, Maria, do you see other hands? I can't, I've only got one screen in front of me, so. Yes, Dagmar, and
Yeah.
I see 2 or 3 more hands now.
Yes. I see that, trying to read the full name, Maldonado. Sorry, I cannot, it won't allow me. Please go ahead. Maldonado.
It's like able donated. Just would like to ask briefly. I like the approach, but you know, RASIC, as Maria mentioned, is something that has been living for a while, and now it's being used not only in Europe, it's also used in America. How can we say that this is not just a renaming? I mean, the fact of the actions are still there, and to replace the idea of the RASIC will be hard in the way of RASIC itself define accountability, if I will say, on some specific labels for accountability. And with this new, with this approach, I think the label will be based on the task, not on the, I will say, people itself. Can you share a little bit more on the definition of this?
So I'm having trouble. I understand the first part of what you said, that it feels trivial. And I like that it feels trivial. But you know what? But you did mention the word task, and what I'm suggesting is that you don't manage every task. I'm really focused on what is durable, what's an asset. So if I don't think we have time to go through an example, but offline, I welcome going through an example. What is a task? Because whatever task you have in mind that's not in the portfolio, what you're telling me is it's not worth documenting. It's micromanaging. It's not collaborative, and it's not risky. So whatever work that's a task that's outside the 5 verbs, okay, if you want me to add to the project plan a task that's micromanaging you, but it's not no one's okay, I'll put it, but don't ask me to default to being infinite. Going back to the title of today, I don't want to be infinite and micromanage these tasks that are not worth 5 verbs. The only thing I'm interested in governing formally is whatever is worth 5 verbs, because I believe everything else you can do at the pub, because it's just a chat. It's not risky. Am I close? I only feel like I understand about 30% of your question, though. So we can try again, or we can talk offline. But am I helping?
Yep. I think that will deserve more call, David. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay. So with the RACI, you don't have a sense of sequence. With RACI, you don't have a sense of duration. With RACI, you don't have a sense of closure. 5 verbs gives you all that. 5 verbs forces collaboration. It is ruthless. It says this work is worth collaborating. And everything else, collaboration is optional. So again, the task that you had in mind, it's not collaborative, so it's low risk. Now, this phrase, easy to overtly opt out. You can say, you know what, I don't like 5 verbs. And so I have a slide for you. It's a word cloud that has about 40 different verbs. Holy ambiguity, Batman. But and this goes back to the factory, do you want rhythm in your agreement factory, or do you want lumpiness? Because if you have 40 different verbs in a task list or a project plan, I'm going to call that lumpy. Lumpy is not fast. Smooth. Smooth is fast. This is explicit, but it is never rigid. You always can change the dependencies, the assignments, the durations. So what we are trying to imitate is an agreement factory. And if anyone's nervous by the word agreement because it feels so final, we can hedge and call it an expectation factory. And for anyone who doesn't like the 5 verbs, then we can say, then we're going to minimize expectations. Again, we could be a culture that minimizes expectations. The second page of the Agile Manifesto says, simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. Who's going to put that on their LinkedIn profile? Hi, I'm Robert, and I maximize the amount of work not done. I'm here to lower your expectations. So this helps us establish this elegant expectation factory. It's ruthless collaboration, but I'm not going to apologize for it because we are all well paid. The 5 verbs helps us distinguish finite productivity, right? The combination 2 slides ago, there are 60 things. Actually, the trust items don't deserve 5 verbs. There's 50 things times 5 verbs on 4 rows. So what I'm proposing to you is that you have a finite portfolio that's worth governing. That is your productivity. Instead of managing or governing your infinite activity, which is meetings and emails, right? Infinite activity are your meetings and your email. The finite, boundaries, the finite productivity is 5 verbs, and whatever you do that can withstand the rigor and the discipline of 5 verbs. From project to project, it can change. But I would argue it's always finite. And the 5 verbs discourages micromanagement. Again, I welcome reactions. Although I'm going to watch the clock. Okay, another benefit of the 5 verbs, it becomes incredibly easy to detect stalled work. And you see an example of that here. It's very easy to see the critical path in our projects. The person, here it's Yolanda. Yolanda here serves as the micro sponsor. Project sponsor is a really big job. What do we do when things become too complicated and too big? We can break it up into smaller pieces. The 5 verbs helps us establish micro sponsors. Yolanda here is the micro sponsor who says, whatever this work is, I sponsor it. It's worth putting on paper. Yolanda is also serving as the tiebreaker because Tracy, Val, Will, and Shin, they might disagree on something. Yolanda serves as the tiebreaker. And she's a very, very visible micro escalation point. The 5 verbs prevents over documentation because the moment the team cannot assign one of these verbs, you now have license to do that work at the pub. Hey boss, I don't have anyone to draft the training materials. We're lean. I mean shorthanded. I mean lean. I don't have anyone to approve the process flow. I don't have anyone, or it's going to sit on, if I don't have anyone to distribute it to, it's documentation that's going to sit on the shelf. Why would we do that? So in order to justify every asset, you have to be able to assign all 5 verbs. So the 5 verbs helps you avoid over documentation. The relationship between authority and accountability. Many of us through our career have felt accountable for something without having the commensurate authority, which means some other clown has the authority without the accountability. That's a bad deal. And the 5 verbs helps stop that and forces you to couple. If you want a seat at the table, I want to know your verb, you have certain authority and you have certain accountability, and we are not going to decouple authority from accountability. As I mentioned earlier, we start to solve the last 3 letters of VUCA. In lessons learned, too often we're asking 2 questions: what do we do well and what could we do better? And just those 2 simple questions leads to 100 different places where we might have that feedback loop to adjust to the next project. And what this framework does is it changes the ratio. The lessons learned template that we're not going to cover in this session has essentially 15 culture traits that we coach and self-monitor, self-mentor. But when you think of the feedback loop back to a project plan that's based on 5 verbs, there's only a limited number of places that you would change for the next project. You would change either what's worth documenting, the interdependencies, the assignments, or the duration. Because again, we are a very structured factory, agreement factory. Everything else is just a chat. It's not risky. It's not going to it's not going to derail the project. Did someone take themselves off mute? Did someone want to interrupt? Okay. So now we slowly start to pay back our documentation debt. Maria, you mentioned, I think you used that term yourself earlier. And so the 5 verbs helps us, we don't have to pay back documentation debt all at once. But now we have a very welcoming framework to continually monitor what else did we miss? What else can we put on paper that will help reduce the marginal cost of our next project? Because we can delegate that work to an inexpensive or a junior employee. It's great training, it's great engagement. So the 5 verbs also helps you stratify and engage junior employees as well as senior employees. And when senior employees are too busy, take their name off the project plan. Say, you don't have a seat at the table, you're too busy, no problem. Either lead, follow, or get out of the way. And again, instead of us always being on and monitoring for an infinite number of emails, infinite number of meetings, we now have boundaries. The 5 verbs helps us identify handoffs. If I'm drafting something, I might start slowly, but at some point, I'm really feeling good about my contribution to a draft. And then I start to exhaust my ideas. Well, at some point, it's just time to move on to the next thing. and X number of people, X number of my coworkers will review the document. They may start slowly, but then they're really accelerating and thinking of great ideas to bring to our review and revise session. And as a group, we might start slowly with our revisions, but at some point we're going to max out and exhaust our revisions, so forth and so on. So this forced handoff, we really combat analysis paralysis. And it's smooth. Lumpy, 70 verbs, 40 verbs. It's lumpy, it's not fast. Smooth is fast. And a nice quote from Mozart: the best way to learn is through the powerful force of rhythm. So this is the last slide, and this zooms out from just the topics of boundaries and infrastructure. And this is the most controversial slide that I present today. And again, it is the last slide. But Maria, are we doing okay on time?
Yes.
Okay. So let me introduce the 4 columns here. The generations of methodology, innovation methodology that most of us are acquainted with. For those of us of a certain age, we know what waterfall is. And it's now sometimes it's called traditional. And then around 2001, or in 2001, the Agile Manifesto was written. And then we had different generations of Agile, disciplined Agile, and scaled Agile, and then business agility, agility with lowercase a. I've attended events where it's about sales agility, Agile marketing, because everyone loves the brand Agile. But no one is purely waterfall or purely Agile, so I think most of us are hybrid. And the materials that I'm presenting to you today are part of a larger body of work that I call elegance. So let's think through, how do we distinguish these 4 generations of methodology? And again, I welcome anyone taking themselves off. If you'd like, take yourself off mute, especially if you have a different point of view. So when I think of waterfall and how we describe waterfall, I think of scope size, documentation, frequency, speed, and predictability. And I think most of us would describe waterfall in these 5 ways. How is Agile different? Well, I think a safe proposal, it's just the opposite. So most conversations about waterfall and Agile, this is where the conversation stops. But of course, we're in a hybrid world, and the RACI is not our friend, and we're not imitating symphonies, and we're in danger of losing boundaries and infrastructure. So now I'm going to add several rows because I want to really scrutinize the culture traits of where healthy teamwork is or where it should be to have healthy boundaries and scale. Cost profile in the disciplined Agile world, the disciplined Agile world may have trademarked the term just barely good enough, or in academics we call it C's get degrees. Well, which cost profile do you think that resembles? Which bar chart do you think that resembles? And of course, today I'm encouraging you to consider infrastructure, which is low upfront. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I believe that too many teams here at the moment are low upfront cost. We are addicted to meetings, we are addicted to emails, and we suffer from high marginal cost. The metaphor of today, many of us are caught in communication traffic jams because speed is a leading culture trait. We're addicted to blind speed, and we're treating speed as a leading culture trait. As I mentioned, authority and accountability, too often they're uncoupled. That's double standards. In our project plan, not only are we trying to govern with 4 adjectives, but we've got dozens, 20, 30, 40 different verbs. Again, that's lumpy. We're minimizing idle workers. Going back to the metaphor of a factory, when you think of a conveyor belt. And I hope that as I go through this, you can already start to expect that this final column is going to propose the opposite of all of these. But VUCA is increasing, and because we've had leadership paradigms of values and principles, we have double standards because values and principles, they're not going to let you overtly opt out. No one is going to upfront decline or reject values and principles, but covertly, in quiet, there is silent dissent. And we have stakeholders who are not operating, they're not behaving according to our values and principles. So it's harsh, but values and principles as a leadership paradigm are harboring double standards. That's a problem. So these red circles are all the culture traits that I am trying to change. And again, one of the latest additions, I swear, twice a month I find some tweak to this table. With AI, we risk infinite documentation. That's not disciplined. That's not empathetic. That's not boundaries. And it's not infrastructure, because a lot of those meeting minutes we're never going to look at again. So here are the opposites. When we have an asset portfolio, our documentation is robust, but it is finite. It is explicit. It is not rigid. And every project that you do, it can change. Instead of being addicted to speed, I would love for us to imitate a symphony and become addicted and obsessed with synchronization. We can be predictive, imitating a symphony in a theater, or we can imitate improvisation, that book Yes and that I showed you. We can have both tools in our skills. I hope that we will become addicted and obsessed with low marginal cost because it is so financially attractive. It's not about wages, it's about the laboriousness. I want us to be able to make teamwork as easy as it should be. And I'm not going to apologize for infrastructure because it means we can handle immense volumes of traffic. Instead of speed being a leading culture trait, let's treat speed as a lagging culture trait. To tweak a Lee Iacocca quote, Lee Iacocca was an automobile manufacturer from the last century, and his quote was, "The speed of the boss is the speed of the team." No, the synchronization skill of the boss dictates the speed of the team. Authority and accountability, let's keep them coupled. Instead of a team being all over the place with 40 different verbs in a task list, let's default to 5 verbs. And if someone says, "Hey, Robert, I want a 6th verb," maybe you standardize it so you still have rhythm, but maybe it's just micromanaging. It's not the end of the world. If someone comes to you and insists, "I need this in the project plan," although it avoids documentation, it's not collaborative, and I don't need an approval. Okay, I'll keep it in the project plan, but it's micromanagement. And so when we synchronize and we have such amazing visibility to our work, now we are minimizing idle work, not idle workers, and there's a difference. Let's decrease VUCA, and let's reject double standards. So I just added this top header this morning because there's a lot of hype right now about AI. And I think this is a different kind of intelligence. It is human intelligence. It's teamwork. It's almost like IQ and EQ. I like HQ, hospitality quotient, but maybe it's a teamwork quotient. But this is not artificial intelligence. This is good teamwork intelligence. I think that's worth hype. Okay, that is all I prepared for you today. Thank you again for hosting me, and no expiration date on reactions, etc.
I am speechless. Speechless. Does anyone has any thought? Just please go ahead, and there's someone getting ready. No?
Well, maybe Robert, thank you for presenting this, and so maybe I can disclose that we had some iterations of the content and the presentation before. And my question is, if you have this, and this harmony or elegance, as you call it, is it how is it implementable? How is it really going to work in organizational context or in a project context or team context? Where would you start trying to use it?
So thank you for that question. I have to pull up a different slide. This is so the first time I was asked that question, Thomas, was from ACMP Ukraine. Irina asked me. She said, "Robert, I like this material, but I don't know what to do next." And so what this slide is it takes the asset portfolio. So you see that here. And I queue up 10 different ways to approach adoption of this. So step one to adopt is if you have a RACI, convert it into a project plan with 5 verbs, just like the mapping that I showed you in the previous slide. If you have verb sprawl in a task list, identify what's worth documenting. Anything in your verb sprawl, fit it into this diagram. Every innovation team, my point of view is that every innovation team needs to know what they do that's worth documenting. They need their version of this. And just have that inventory. If your team, so step 3, if your team feels that it has a kind of documentation debt, I'm going to say then you probably lack current state documentation. There's a fun cliche, the best time to plant a tree, it was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. Well, it's similar with current state documentation. The best time to document current state was back when it was still future state. But the second best time is today. So if you feel that your team is in a scenario of documentation debt, I believe you need to put this current state documentation on paper. If your team has low morale, everyone needs to be producing weekly status reports. Again, this is not revolutionary. A stoplight report. Have your team members start rating work. What work feels red? What work feels yellow? What work feels green? I wish, I hope, I wonder is an always on low footprint engagement survey. If you have relationship problems, and again, we didn't have time in this session, but there's a tool that's in the book, and I have a blog, and I can share that attachment with Maria as well. It's called the approachability menu, inspired by a coworker of mine who was fired, and I started asking, was she surprised? Was she approached? Was she approachable? Was she coached? Was she coachable? Can I create a template that minimizes the chance that someone gets fired and they're surprised? If we simply don't know where to start, we have a rigorous lessons learned. If we feel like we have a drought, we need more innovation work, these are the things circled with number 7. These are the documents that teams need to emphasize. If you have too much work, if your team is drowning, you need to take a look at your roadmap and your project plan to reduce the drowning. 9, if you have stakeholders that are not engaged, let's lean into what change management and ADKAR would teach us. And finally, if you feel your team is obsessed with technology, if you're overemphasizing technology, then it means you're underemphasizing process. So let's really lean into process documentation. So that's, Thomas, that might be an overly thorough response, but is it helpful?
Yeah, it's helpful how to do it. My question was also around, can you start on a project level, or do you have to wait until the whole organization adapts this model?
So I believe there's any time where you have a person who is psychologically safe, because this is threatening to the status quo. Anyone who feels inspired and feels, adopting that would be easy. They may be junior, they might be senior, but I believe it must start with whoever is most frustrated, whoever feels psychologically safe, wherever momentum you can build. Because, or if you have the ability to be super structured, then of course start at the customer. Start at the customer. And the other insight from this slide is that there's nothing circled under technology, because everything we document under design, build, test, I don't believe it's culture shaping. And it's like the risk is just low. There are so many smart, skilled people. They have detail orientation. When a team has problems, the origin is upstream.
Yeah, agree. Okay.
So I think but again, if from top to bottom, I would start with the customer. Can I backtrack here? And again, this is a big list, but it's not unmanageable. You know, for a typical team that's for an average team, because I've attended a few of your events, I suspect that for anyone hearing my voice live right now, the best places to start is if you don't have a roadmap, you might run the risk of having 40 projects in flight right now, but you don't have awareness because you don't have those 40 projects on a slide, and you need a sponsor for someone to agree that they're okay with too many projects going on. Too many projects going on is a communication traffic jam, and you're slowing down all your projects. Earlier, we talked about a change log. We talked about a parking lot. A change log is a kind of suggestion box, right, that demonstrates to our stakeholders that we are listening. These are ideas for change. Any individual can just, if someone hearing my voice right now is not producing status reports, I think that's a risk. You raise your discipline and you raise your empathy when you produce weekly status reports, because you make your boss's job easier. You make alignment easier. And you have a paper trail of all of your contributions over months. Every now and then,
trying to say something.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Am I right? Let me see. Gunda?
Yeah,
Were you
that
trying to?
was actually me. I just call my status report a little bit differently in the meantime. I just call it newsletter in the meantime. But anyway, it gives the weekly status to my key stakeholders, of course. So no matter what the word is, the purpose is the same.
Yeah.
For those of you who read music, I'm hoping you can see the rhythm here.
Yeah.
It's muscle memory, just like a dance. It's the mechanics. Quick, quick, slow, quick, quick, slow. And now my attention is up here on my dance partner. The empathy, the creativity, that's inside the project charter. It's inside the process flow.
I think to operationalize it in my head, it would be helpful if I see a case study, an example. Maybe we can have a separate session for that.
Yeah, I am welcoming a case study because so I've been using the 5 verbs for 20 years. I didn't decide to write a book, and I did not decide to confront software centricity until like 5 years ago. But so over the last 20 years, I've gradually used this at my places of employment. But I do welcome a full case study. If any of you, again, formal or informal, conversational, email, LinkedIn, or anything, if you're more curious about this, I'm happy to provide, more information. My books are not expensive. And and you have the benefit of the editors who held me in check.
Yeah.
Because Prisoner's Dilemma, that was an asset. I wanted to include Prisoner's Dilemma to understand the payoffs of why would someone undermine. And there's another framework called Wilson-Lowy that gets very political very quickly about minority. Why would you proceed with a pet project, right? A pet project effectively is the minority saying that they get their project. And there's a formal framework for it called Wilson-Lowy, Lowi. I think it's incredibly vital framework, but it's under discussed. But my editors limited me. So that's why Prisoner's Dilemma and Wilson Lowy are not in the books. I see a hand from Dagmar.
Yeah.
Yes, just connecting to what Maria mentioned, thinking about how to roll this out operationally. Is there also maybe a way of implementing this on addition to other ways of working? For example, if I'm scared that my stakeholders are so familiar and connected to the RACI matrix, can I not just apply the 5 verbs in addition and slowly transition towards the elegance way of working, testing it out, showing, okay, there's an added value to it, and then I can implement more of it to do it gradually?
Yes, actually, that's exactly what happened to me, Dagmar, over the last 20 years, is I didn't realize that, I'm going to phrase it differently, I didn't conclude that I could eliminate the RACI. So for many of my projects over the last 20 years, I had both going on, and that is a very common reaction I've had over the last few years, is that they like the 5 verbs, but it's hard to completely give up the again, I call it RACI. So I do believe having them in parallel for a while, I think that makes sense. And that's what happened. That's exactly what I did over the last 20 years. But by 2018, I was forbidding the RACI because I didn't want to distract us. Let's only govern what's worth putting on paper. Everything else is a chat. Yeah. We can do it at the pub.
Because shifting to this way of working is a change in itself, and it requires maturity, buy-in from stakeholders. We really need to be trained. We need to train our team to start using it. We can start playing around by ourselves and see how everyone is adapting to it, but it would have been helpful if we can follow some step-by-step framework or just a case study that it can help us visualize how it could have been implemented easier.
And so yes, Maria, thank you for that. And there's also there's a lesson from improv that we can lean into, that humans are wired to complete things that are incomplete. Right? So here as a speaker, as an author, I have certain boundaries, and it makes sense that I stop at some point. And professionals like all of you can pick up where I left off. So it is a form of yes and. Whatever fraction of this material that you like, you can adopt, and you just keep building. And again, you can go back to, well, there's a couple pillars here. One reference point can always be, what do you do that's worth 5 verbs? I think that can be a very healthy foundation. It's a lot, but it's finite. Another fun mindset is what metaphors. So I mentioned how values and principles are tolerating double standards, and metaphors don't tolerate double standards. So here's a list. Here's 2 lists of metaphors. I hope some of you smile at this because you see the dysfunction from your past team, of course. I'm sure your current team is healthy and you're only on the right. But maybe one of your past teams, I don't know, resembled a fire drill or whack-a-mole or a traffic jam or a bull in a china shop or a cat chasing a laser pointer. But I think this can also be inspirational, that we need to stop behaving like these things on the left. We need to start behaving like the metaphors on the right. And again, the difference between metaphors and values and principles is that with values and principles, it's difficult to overtly opt out. It's very easy to covertly opt out. But with metaphors, it's the opposite. It is easy to say, Robert, no, I don't want to imitate a dance. I don't want to imitate improv. I don't want to imitate a symphony. But it is very difficult to secretly opt out. Because as a saxophone player, I need to see the saxophone up to your lips. As a dancer, I understand the difference between bachata and salsa and cha-cha. So you cannot covertly opt out. Right? These are powerful frameworks to improve productivity, our culture, revenue, profitability. Again, I'm just reacting. I don't know if that's helpful.
Well, I'm really inspired by this. And before we proceed with the rest of the presentation that I'll take over, I want to ask you, what is the sentence, the yes and sentence that you want to finish this presentation? And let us think about and complete your sentence.
Yes, and convert your communication traffic jams into communication symphonies. It's the best seat in the house. To sit among other performers. Imagine yourself on an innovation team, but you're surrounded by violin players, trumpet players, flute, bassoon, drums. That represents all of our skills. And we can change. Now that we have, I don't know how to play violin.
Welcome to the virtual power teams.
But I know that I could, for my own career growth, I could go pursue learning to play violin, learning to play drums. So this analogy can motivate career growth, because now that we have visibility to these other skills, I can say, you know what, been there, done that with code and testing. I want to move upstream. A business analyst might work in requirements, future state process flows. And a business analyst may say, I want to work on project independent work. Thank you, Thomas. Tango, love that. So yes, I am far from the only person that is really talking about how do we infuse performing arts into our work. There's so much out there. I'm playing yes and with all of them. And I'm saying yes and to the racy, because the racy says for. I say yes, and verbs. How about verbs?
Yeah.
But in the words of W. Clement Stone, 5 verbs is a small hinge that swings a large door of culture change. Because it's transparency. It is forced collaboration. And I don't want to be the victim of people who really don't want to be there. If you're inauthentic and you're insincere, the 5 verbs helps us recognize very quickly, I don't know what your verbs are, dude. Go do your verbs. But we're here to shape a symphony. It's an example of fail fast, fail small. But
Thank you,
back to your
Robert.
question, Maria, is yes, and let's pursue communication symphonies.
That's a good closure. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again with another topic or a continuation. And I'll go back to, and everyone is inspired, and they'll take away the yes, and let's create symphonies in the way we are working. You definitely shift something for me. Thank you for that. And everyone now has an opportunity to rate this event, rate our work, and give us ideas for new events to create for you. You can scan the QR code, and I will put also the code in the chat. I'm sharing the Mentimeter now. You should be able to see it.
Could you share the link to the Menti, please?
Yes.
Not just the code. Yeah, because then
Yes.
it's easier to type all these crazy characters.
Absolutely. It's coming. Seven people voted. There are 17 among us. I think we can do better than this. Let me join you. All right. Thank you for the rating. Robert, you did really good. Thank you for that. I think our people are really satisfied, and please tell us if you want to see Robert again. Drill more use cases or talk about the 10 tools or more in depth about the conversation that he just brought to us. And use the opportunity to rate our work. And if the questions that have been in the survey are not enough for you, please, if you think it's important and it's going to bring us value, drop an email, send it to us with some actionable feedback that we can reply back to. I cannot see any rating on the second slide. Okay, there it is. Thank you for that. The survey is going to be open for 4 more days, I think, and you will be able to proceed rating after the session if you like. And the reason why I'm saying this, the most important for us as a local group is your opinion about the upcoming events. Any ideas, suggestions, topics, people that you want to see us bringing here, you can share on this slide. And you can use it for after the presentation as well. Thank you for doing us a pleasure to be with us, Robert. And he has written in the chat, you can all see it, that there's no expiration date for ideas, feedback, pushback, concerns, etc. Thank you for sharing your LinkedIn, and please do reach out to Robert, communicate. As he says, there's no expiration. I don't see any ideas. I can't believe it. You don't have ideas? Okay. Doesn't matter. Let's go back to the presentation. Maybe you'll come up with an idea later. Please use the survey. We are in your service and we are doing this to support your growth. Okay, I see something about servant leadership. Topic about servant leadership. This gives us ideas. We don't want to repeat the sessions or the topics. We want to be creative, but also serve you and your needs. That's why this is important for us. Good speakers have great topics. What are the good speakers you want to see? Gabor and AI. Am I pronouncing it right? Gabor? Like the Hungarian name? Good. Okay, the upcoming events. As you can see on my screen now, we have PM Surprise. It's Marcus from Switzerland. Thomas, you want to add about this?
Yeah, it's about how to create presentations that stick and that influence the stakeholders. So that's the topic Marcus will talk about. He is a project manager since more than 20 years. He gives a lot of presentations, and actually PMI has a speaker list, and he's on that speaker list. So that's how we came to know Marcus and prepared this session for you.
And we have value-driven project manager is going to be presented by Frank Salatis from the United States, and later
and Frank is actually a PMI fellow, one of 86 PMI fellows only. So I know him since 1998. He is really a phenomenon. You know, when he speaks on conferences, he always brings his guitar and sings a song about project management. That's to your point, yeah, of music and projects.
Robert, you cannot miss that session.
I agree.
And then we have on the 25th of September, we have certainty, no matter what the future brings, with Laura Powers. Also from the United States, she brings her insights. We have more events to come. Please stay tuned on our webpage event calendar. And this is a call for action, or we're inviting you to join our mission. We are part of something bigger here. This is the list of the names of the people who are behind local group Darmstadt, people that are doing these events possible. We stand for diversity, collaboration, and global connection. As I had mentioned earlier, we're a team of 7 volunteers from 6 different countries that are brought together not by borders, but by our shared passion for project management, knowledge sharing, and continued community growth and continuous learning. We believe that everyone everywhere has something powerful to contribute, and we are always looking to expand our circle with curious mind, fresh ideas, and enthusiastic hearts. Whether you want to join us or find a place in another regional or local group to volunteer, this is your opportunity. You can grow professionally by collaborating with experienced practitioners. You can share the future of how we lead and learn together. By volunteering with us, you can also drive impact by helping others grow and connect, and be part of a community that embraces your story and voice and your vision. You can find more details on the webpage that isn't listed, or just go on the PMI Global, search for volunteering within the German chapter, or find more details in the Germany chapter volunteering page. And this is the moment for you. We are 7 minutes past. I apologize for that. This is the PDU code that you can screenshot, take a photo, or you will wait for the email that will be sent to you the upcoming days. I cannot, maybe by Friday. I'll thank you for the attendance, and I'll share the information that has been shared during the presentation along with the presentation PDF of Robert, but also the PDU code. Thank you very much for your patience and for your curiosity, for learning and expanding your views with Robert. And I welcome you on the upcoming event that we have. Have a good evening, everyone, and see you again.
Thanks for hosting me. Thanks for everyone's contribution.
Of course.
See you again.
I enjoyed you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Good evening, everyone.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Good evening.
Good evening. Tot-ziens.
Good evening.
Ciao, ciao.
Here we are, alone.
Yeah,
Yes.
stop presenting and stop recording.
Yeah. So, well, before